Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome to the Craig and Greg Show. We're glad that you're back. I'm Craig. This is Greg. We want to talk about a topic today that literally every leader has to deal with, regardless of the size of your organization, the country in which your organization is located. It doesn't matter. You are going to have to deal with problems. Now, I know this is probably a new subject for you because you've never had to deal with any problems.
I've never caused them either.
I know that's a lie.
But my parole officer says, oops, there we go.
Because I think that part of your bio says something about like leadership rascal.
Rascal.
Yeah, so I think just built right in there is somebody who's perhaps causing some problems.
Probably. That's why ostrich is one of my favorite birds, because they put their head in the sand, and then everything's gone. Something like that. That's how I used to go through the maze. Like, remember haunted houses when you were little? You're like, right. Okay, the noise. Nope, he's not there. I heard a chainsaw. Nope, he's not there.
Right. Well, sadly, that's how a lot of people deal with problems too.
I know, exactly.
They're just like, I don't see a problem.
I came into work with this to-do list, and the problem wasn't on there, so I'm just going to stick with my to-do list. No. As a leader, Craig, I know problems can come from different places, different sources. Some have a elevation of, this is on fire. Sure. Or this one needs to be dealt with, or someone else can deal with it. How have you kind of navigated or seen in your leadership or other leaders deal with it?
Well, I think let's start with a leader that's first coming into a position. I think that anytime a leader comes into a new position, you're going to inherit some problems, because a lot of times, even if the leader before you wasn't like covering their eyes and pretending they weren't there, there's always going to be some inherent problems that come in. Mm-hmm. I think that at the beginning, you really set the tone, but the good news is it doesn't matter. Like later on, even if you didn't start off well, I think you can mm-hmm. address them down the road. But that would be one of the things that I would counsel new leaders, regardless of whether you've just been promoted into a position or you've come brand new into an organization. I promise you, no matter how wonderful it is, and how excited people are for you to be there, there are some problems. And so you need to start looking for them right away. But how soon do you deal with them? Some problems you're going to have to wait on, and you have to pick those battles. Because I think that leaders gain some credibility in the way that they handle problems. But some of the problems, you're going to have to wait to see what has the culture already been like for addressing this. Right. Because there might have to be a cultural change, not just addressing the single problem. Mm-hmm. And that's where some discernment comes in with the leader. Is this a systemic issue that I need to think really big and try to address something really big for the whole organization? Or is this a specific problem that I need to meet it head on and address it, which I know that you've experienced that too before in organizations where there's the problem that people are focusing on really isn't the problem.
No, sometimes they look at the effect versus the cause, and that's really. So I think the part that I like about the leadership builders and killers is this problem solving, and either do we ignore it or do we address it, right? And so it's really similar to like ships. Big yachts are made wherever they are, Italy, wherever, and it looks really pretty. Right, it's on the dock, it's dry dock, they're polishing it up. But that's not why it was built. Right. It was built for the seas. Yeah. And I think there's where leadership, we almost have to go into it knowing whether you're leading a school or a church or a business organization or a retail company or a service industry, construction, whatever it happens to be, you're going to have problems, and it will define you in the end how you handle. Yep. And it is that builder killer for us. It's, I'm going to ignore it. It's not my problem. It will be the problem that we get in trouble with. I worked with a few folks, and we'll get into this. It's a little bit humorous, but now at this perspective, I can do it. I don't know if there were problems before, but whenever he got involved, it was problematic. Mm-hmm. And so you have some that is like emergency, like it's a systemic, we've got to deal with culture or our teams. Others are like, I think it's just two people not getting along, and let's let them be mature and deal with it, or help coach them, sure. Right? There's our coaching plug. But I think the real issue comes down to sometimes we cause them ourselves, and we don't realize it.
Yep. Yeah, I think honest self-reflection is really important, and that's where I think that the value has been. Like you and I have worked in different industries. We've certainly done a lot of projects where we're together, but being able to lay something out for you that I'm dealing with, and you're looking at it through a totally different set of eyes, and you can say, hey, Craig, I noticed this, and perhaps you want to address it this way instead of this way. I think that there's real value in that, because it's the same thing like we talked about with the problems itself. If we're going to even do this about our own leadership, right, and not be willing to say, I might be the problem here. I love John Maxwell has, in one of his books, he has a thing that he calls the Bob principle. And, he says, if Bob has a problem with everybody, Bob is probably the problem. Well, if I'm looking around my organization and I'm just going problem, and that's all I see, well, it might be that I'm actually the problem because right. I'm not addressing it the way that it needs to. So I think that getting that person around you that can, that's what we need, don't we? Put it right up here in the front.
Yeah. So this is just an image or a connection to problem solving, but oftentimes I can reflect even on my leadership journey. I went in thinking I'm going to have a good day. I got a to-do list. I'm going to be around some great people. And then, 45 minutes into your, hey, I'm really checking things off the list. A problem comes to your attention. Could be someone yelling or, running in or whatever, or call you. And this is the vehicle that I sometimes had to drive, was the fire truck.
Yep.
To put it out. It doesn't make it go away, but it sure eliminates more collateral damage. When you almost have to protect the people from the problem just chewing it up. And organizations have split up, whether they're churches or businesses, yes. Family practices. If they didn't address it, it's the underlying factor. So I learned, unfortunately, red's not my favorite color. It doesn't really bring the hue out in my eyes. But being a firefighter tends to be part of leadership.
Yes.
I do have a story to share, but I'd like you to add a little bit on the putting the fires out and then what?
Right. Well, I think first of all, like we talked about before, even if there's a problem that you say as a leader, I don't know if we're ready to address this yet. I think that it's letting your team know, hey, just so that you all know,
right?
I see this problem right over here. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not covering my eyes. I know the problem's there. However, I don't think that we have the right resources yet. Let's just quarantine it if we can. Let's try to, we know that it's there. We are going to address it. And then you can find the time, because I think that, you might have to say, we got a bigger issue. If you're showing up in your fire truck every single day, then there's another problem. You're not looking large enough to be able to deal with that. Right. And so I think that's got to be the first step to be able to do that. And that goes back again to kind of that honest feedback that you can get from a friend that could say, hey, are you looking too small? Or are you, to use another cliche, are you turning this little molehill into a mountain? Maybe it's not as big of a problem as you think it is. And you're spending a lot of time on something that's kind of small.
Right.
How about if you step back and let's try to look a little bit bigger?
I think the one thing about problems is, either we go to fix them, solve them, work with them, or we leave them be. The problem for some of us in leadership is we carry the problem where we go.
Yes.
Like we just didn't deal with it. Deal with it meaning let it be. Let it smolder, or put it out, right. One or the other. And I think that's one of the challenges. There's a story I have. I'll let the fire truck go. I coached a CEO of a very large organization, about 1,400 people, multiple states, very good leader. And he was excellent with people. But I met him over breakfast, and we used to share like leadership books and talk, like go through like our own book leadership club, And he came in and he did not look very good, And normally he does. So I just said, hey, let's not get into the book. What's happening? And he goes, I'm just so weary. I'm putting out fires. I'm dealing with HR, dealing with finance, dealing with ops, dealing with directors and different. He says, I'm getting beat up and worn out. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, we'll call him Bill, not Bob. Hey, Bill, here's my question. Let's go back upstream a minute. Who are the leaders you brought in? Are they equipped to lead? Because if they're not, then they're managers or supervisors, which is not a bad role, but that's why you're tired, because you're leading them.
Sure.
Or you're making up for them. And he goes, his comment was, oh. I said, well, sometimes you have to reflect, who am I working with? Yes. And are they making it harder? I mean, if you said, hey, will you come over to the house, help me with some landscaping? Sure. We're going to put 20 yards of bark around your house. Well, I see you grabbing a lemonade, talking to your wife, and I'm hoofing the wheelbarrow. We're getting the chips down, but I'm doing more of the work. Not that you would do that to me, but that's the analogy. So he's making up for those people. In the end, I challenged him, really do an assessment on, are they contributing or taking up space? And that's a great leadership position to be in. He ended up removing 2 of him. He had about 18 direct reports across the country, et cetera. And he ended up replacing 2 of them, moved one to a lesser problem-solving job, and another one, removed. So I think that's one thing us as leaders, we sometimes have to make tough decisions.
Yep. And what I did in a couple of my organizations to try to develop the leadership potential or see if there was the leadership potential there, I told my team, if you come to me with a problem, I want you to bring with it 3 possible solutions. I want you thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And so I really, I saw the people that just kind of like, they would write down like 3 kind of silly things, because they'd be like, well, here's a problem. So one solution is we could win the lottery and have millions of dollars and we could do this. And, they just come up with silly ones. Okay. But then I had other people that would come in and say, here's a problem. We could potentially train somebody to do this. We could share the responsibility with this department. And I'm like, even if I thought, hey, none of those solutions really work, I liked the thought process that was going on there. And so now I have discovered a leadership protege, that you can say, okay, let's take one of those ideas that you had. Let's try to flesh it out a little bit. Let's where would this go how would you implement? And because like you said before, I remember you telling me you can't run the organization and put out all the fires at the same time. You're not leading anything if all you're doing is putting out fires. You have to raise up other people that know how to deal with it. Every problem can't land on your desk. No. There have to be problems that are solved. If you're doing your job as the leader and you're empowering other leaders, you're also empowering them to solve those problems before you even know that it's a problem.
Right. And I think part of it, empower, encourage, educate people so that they actually do feel it's safe to solve it.
Yes.
There's one subject, maybe quick, and then I'll give you a quote and then you can wrap it up. But one subject is the urgent versus emergency, and someone else's failure in leading or problem solving becomes an emergency.
Sure.
Well, is that really why you got up to be the leader today? Urgent is, hey, this is critical to our team. This is critical to our customers. Sure. This is critical to, our shareholders. This is critical. So that's different. Those are important ones to dot your I's, cross your T's. But the urgent versus emergency, do you have an example for the audience?
Well, I love, Stephen Covey has that grid. And we used to do that a lot with problems. I'd ask my team, again, when they'd bring it, I'd say, okay, this thing keeps coming up. Why is that?
Yeah.
So which quadrant do we need to be in to be able to solve this? All right, why aren't we able to put it there? Well, because we got other things that are really not that important and mission critical that have been occupying our time, so we just don't have the time to deal with this. Right. And so, again, it's kind of going back. I think almost every problem, I used the term earlier, some problems are more systemic and some are really specific. But I think if you get right down to it, ultimately all the problems are systemic because there's a culture that you're going to develop.
Right.
And some people on your team are, if you make them afraid to try anything,
right?
If you worked for me and you're like, I think I know how to solve this problem, but if I do that, Craig's going to get all bent out of shape because he didn't get the credit for it and he wasn't looped in on the process. Right. But if you knew that I was like, you come to me later and say, here was the problem and here's how we took care of it, and I'm going to go, hey, good job. Mm-hmm. You're going to take care of those problems, and now I'm freed up to cast vision, to lead, not to put out fires.
Right.
So every problem is going to become a systemic problem at some point. You have to deal with the whole organization.
Maybe that's different for the audience. That's different than widespread problem versus systemic, meaning it's in our culture, but it's affecting all of us, but all of us aren't driving the problem. Right. Widespread would be we have this problem almost in every department. Yep. And that's different.
Sure.
Albert Einstein has a great quote, which I'll read it real quick and then we can wrap up. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. Yep. And I think as I reflect back, if I created a problem, it really was a great lesson. I mean, the wins are awesome, right? You're winning with your team, you're winning for a customer, you're whatever it is. And then when you do kind of get a lesson, you're like, that would be insanity to assume I can do the same and expect something different.
Yes.
And so as leaders, that's our big goal here, is to become engaged in the problem, but not agitated by the problem, which can be, again, why did he do that again? He's just, and that's kind of our frustration, right? And so it's that cause we have to work with more than the effect. The effect is, lack of safety or lack of communication or team chemistry or whatever it is. But the cause could be, jealousy, pridefulness, whatever it happens to be. So things that we have to watch out for as we solve problems.
Absolutely. So leaders, listen, don't shy away from problems. You're going to have them, but you need to come up with a framework on how to deal with it. One of the first things that I think that you heard Greg and I say is don't try to do it by yourself. Get somebody else that can, maybe outside of your organization, a trusted friend.
A coach.
Yes. Man, we were right on thinking that one, almost like we planned it, but we didn't. Get somebody to speak into your life, give you a different perspective than what you have, but then get other people on your team involved as well. Don't try to be the sole firefighter. You're going to have a real hard time leading your organization to the next level if you're always trying to deal with those problems. So we want to be able to help you, whether it's through our coaching huddles, and that will be more of a big picture thing. But even if there's specific issues, you say, boy, I keep running into this same problem in my organization, drop us a comment, either on our Twitter or even in the comments below the video, and say, hey, here's a problem that keeps coming up in my organization, and we'll do our best to work that into an upcoming episode and try to address that for you. So make sure that you subscribe on YouTube so you know when the next videos come out. Follow us on Twitter as well and interact with us there. And be sure to check out our website as well. And if you're interested in having us work with you in our coaching huddles, you'll find a special link on there that you can get more information and fill out the form. And then we'll get back in touch with you. We look forward to talking to you real soon. See ya.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of The Craig and Greg Show.